Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Brad. I am a life coach, and I help people that are deconstructing from their faith, whether it's the beginning, middle, end, and help them reach goals. Obviously, I help people that deal with anxiety or stress, as well as relationships. So I'm glad to be here today. Hi, Carly. Good to see you. I will be joined by a very special guest here in a moment, and she has a story of her own that I'm too, Carly, as well. I'm looking forward to this one as well. And so this is a fascinating story and one I can't wait for you to hear. And so she will be joining us shortly. But let me just take a moment to remind you during these holiday seasons that remember that you hold the power in the sense that you only have to do whatever you want to do. And so don't spend this holiday just trying to make other people happy, but make time for yourself. Make sure that the joy of the holidays does not escape you because you're trying to people please. Take that moment, take that schedule, decide what you want to do, when you want to do, and what you don't want to do, and make it yours. And so enjoy those holidays. Carly, it is good to see you. For those that do not know, Carly, who's here, is one of my former students from student ministry way back in the day. And so it is always nice to talk with her and see her show up and hear her story. She's another story that I think is fascinating, and I think I'd love to hear, and you guys might love to hear. So, that being the case, my person's going to hop on here in a second. Let me remind you, if you need more information about what I do, you can go to coachingwithbrad.org. I deal with a wide variety of issues, life issues, as well as you can see what I'm about and what I do. Or you can obviously find me here on this IG. That's primarily where I am. Hit me up in the DMs anytime you want, and I'll be more than happy to talk with you. I don't shun anybody. I don't tell anybody to get lost. So feel free to talk to me with whatever you want to talk about. So that being the case, I also want to let you know that if you struggle with anxiety during the holidays, that I provided a free anxiety worksheet on my webpage, coachingwithbrad.org, that you can go and just download, and we'll give you some tips and tips. Sorry, not trips. If it gave you trips, that'd be awesome. But tips that will help you get through the holidays as well. She's just logged on. Now she's going to probably click my picture, ask to join, or whatever have you, and she will be here in a second. And so, but you can go there on that website and get the anxiety worksheet. It's free, no cost whatsoever. So, anything else that I can do for you, please let me know, and I will do what I can. So, that being the case, she is just requested to join. And hey,
Hey,
yes, how are you
how you
doing?
doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Sorry, I was a little confused about how this works. I've never joined a live before,
Oh,
so this is an experience for me as well.
it's all about clicking on a picture and figuring out how to ask to get in, right? Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today.
It's good to be here. It's good
Not
to be
just
here.
about what I do. So I'm glad you finally showed up so I don't talk about myself anymore. It's always weird for me. Um, so are you, am I coming across clear? Is the sound clear for you?
Yeah, it's perfect for me right now. So, yeah, it's great.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you for joining us. Excited to get to talk to you. Would you just take a moment and just kind of introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Lurie. I describe myself as an esoteric and mystic witch, and I support women on their deconstruction journeys as well as their reconstruction journeys. So, as they not just what do I do with this religion that I've left behind, but also what do I want to do now and what sorts of spiritual practices do I want to incorporate in my life? And I help them discover what's going to work for them. So, that's what I do.
Awesome. You are breaking up a little bit, just so you know. I don't know if it's a bad connection or what, but I get the little circle
Okay,
that's going on there. So I don't know if that's you or me. Mm. Ah, okay. I know. Okay. So let's just continue on and see go from there. Uh, you there? Uh-oh. You're breaking up again.
oh no, it's because I. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, that's a little bit better. Yeah, I can hear you now. Are you there? Uh-oh. I believe that she is having technical difficulties. You got the spinning wheel of death on my screen. Does anyone else have that on theirs as well? Is she frozen? Uh-oh. I believe we've lost her temporarily. That's okay. I'm sure she will be back um, in a second. She's just got to find the right location in her house. So, um, thank you, Carly. I thought so too. Sometimes she has some trouble with her internet. So she should be right back shortly. I'm sure she's just finding a room where the internet works best. We've all had those technical difficulties before. So you've been mommying, huh, Carly? Um, you know, keeping busy, I'm sure. So I'm glad that you're here, even though you are doing your mommy duties as well, right? So taking care of your little one. So we'll wait for her to pop back on and see if we can get her there. Let's see. Okay, she's just requested to follow again, so we'll get this going here. Just a little blip in the radar. Nap time. Hey,
Hi, I found
hey,
a corner.
you found the corner, right? Yay!
So thank you all for hanging out while I figured out what was going on. I appreciate that.
Hey, that's all right. We all have those technical difficulties from time to time, right?
Yes, and I haven't done lives in this house in ever, so I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go. So it's good
Okay.
to know. It's good to
Yeah.
know that the Wi-Fi is bad upstairs. That's
Okay.
useful.
You learn to do it every day, right? So that's okay. That's all right. So glad you're here. Okay. So for those that are just kind of joining us and you've just popped into where it's clear, why don't we try this again? Why don't you just take a moment and introduce yourself again? How about that?
Absolutely. My name is Lurie. I describe myself as a esoteric and mystical witch, and my work specifically is with working with women as they deconstruct and reconstruct. So as they deconstruct the oppressive religious systems they are coming from, and how do they reconstruct a spirituality that is actually liberating for them. And so that's what we do with each other. And so that's my focus of my work.
Awesome. We just had a few people come in here. Unorthodox. Hello. Informal mystic. I'm sorry. I got tongue tied there. Hello. Goddess of Tetris. All right. So let's talk my friendly witch.
All right.
Eric witch. All right. So tell us a little bit. Thank you for stopping by, Goddess of Tetris. Love you always. So let's talk a little bit here. Knowing that you're that right now, all right, tell us through this progression. Like, what was your religious background? How'd you end up where you are now?
Yeah. So I was raised in a fundamentalist evangelical family.
Hmm.
And the idea was if you're a woman, yes, of course, read the Bible, pray, all that stuff. But really, the pull was if you're a good Christian woman, you're going to be a virgin until you get married. And then when you get married, you're going to be a submissive wife. And that was what I was supposed to do. And so I did that. I was the good purity ring wearing woman who got married. My ex-husband's now wedding ring was my purity ring that I wore around my neck. And yeah, did everything right. And then I found out after I got married that message that that's going to be the thing that's going to complete you, that being a wife and mother is going to be your greatest joy in life, that's going to complete you, that's your ultimate purpose, I didn't feel complete. There was more that I wanted out of life. I wanted to pursue a career. I was interested in theater and performance, and so I wanted to pursue that. And I also was becoming very intrigued by this idea of women's work, or like working with women, and which was feminism, but I didn't really know that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started really trying to explore what all this is. And that led me into, long story short, into goddess worshiping circles, understanding the names for God, the feminine ideas of God that I had not been taught about, including like women mystics, women saints, and led me to really start to want to understand, what does it mean to be a woman who loves God? Because in our world, we're very much given an understanding of what it means to be a woman who loves God, and it's through a male lens, and it typically is for men, through men, with men, under men. And I didn't want to, literally or figuratively, and I didn't want to like be a part of that anymore. Ultimately, that of course led to a divorce, because that did not work for my ex. But also it led me to, I got 2 master's degrees. One is focused on women's narratives in religion and how they contribute to oppressive structures globally. And then I got another master's focused on feminist theology, and I looked at women in the Bible and women in church history. And so that's what led me into this journey. And I ended up choosing the term esoteric and mystical witch because I realized that the women who were killed because they were witches or accused of witchcraft were not Wiccan. The Wiccan religion didn't exist. They weren't necessarily worshiping the moon in the same way that we tend to have an understanding of. They were just practicing spirituality outside of what has been considered appropriate and good to the institution. So once I started exploring what it means to understand God through the feminine, immediately I started being accused of witchcraft. And I thought, I don't think I'm a witch. I think I'm just like hanging up a picture of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Like, I think I'm into the Black Madonna and saints, but apparently that made me a witch. And so I kind of fought it. And then eventually I was like, okay, I'm a witch. Done. If following the divine makes me a witch, I'm a witch.
All right. So, and it's I'm happy to see that you have not got burnt at the stake yet, at least physically. You know, awesome. I had an interview not too long ago with another witch who is what she considers a water witch, which was interesting. We discovered that I'm a pipe witch, so you know, it's all good. So, want to say hello to some other people that have just come on. Do has just come on. I'm going to attempt to say the whole thing. I'm so sorry. Rebecca, hi, how you doing? Cammy has come on. Empath has come on. He says hello. Empath says hello. And then obviously Gold Bear Media, who actually runs my site and everything,
nice.
is on. I really appreciate that. So that being the case, okay, so you have decided you're going to be a witch, but we're going to back up just a second because I want to know, was there a singular point that you sat there in an aha moment and said, okay, this is it. This is the turning point for me.
Yes, kind of. So it was, my ex was in seminary, and I was a seminarian's wife, and that's what I was supposed to be. And there was a seminarian's wife tea, I think. And during it was kind of prepping the first year seminarian wives on what their experience was going to be like in seminary. And it became very clear that there were 3 options for me. I was at the time working as an actor and a director. And I was informed at that meeting that the ultimate things I can do to support my spouse were to get a divinity degree alongside of him. I could, which I ended up doing, but at a very different school, studying something that I don't think they would have let me study there. But well, not a divinity degree, it's a theology degree, but similar dance. And then the other one was to make his babies and raise them.
Very
And
important stuff right there.
I mean, I'm not smacking motherhood. It's a
No,
beautiful, beautiful thing.
but that is a serious requirement within.
It's huge. To not be a mom is suspicious.
Yes.
And and then the third one was to get a job, which I consider like this new veiled patriarchy that they're like passing off as like empowering women, is like you can get a job to like fund his missionary work. And I love this Gold Bear Media just said, I got my MRS degree. Good job. I also got my MRS degree. I got married in college, so I get it. So didn't stick, but still, I did get the letters. But it's this weird thing where men will make comments like, "Oh, my wife actually makes more than me." Ha 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 ha. But she can't leave that job, and it's not necessarily the thing that like fills her soul up in the same way that we would hope a lucrative job would fill a woman up. Like she's there because she's funding his career, not because she has like a passion for finance or whatever it is that she's doing. Because she can't become like a CEO of a finance firm. Mm-hmm. She can just comfortably middle management is
right.
Right. So that moment at that tea hit me that I wasn't going to be allowed to follow my soul in this world, that was not going to be acceptable. And I remember asking specifically, what do you suggest for me, since I'm really focused on my career? And I got literally a room of blank stares. And then a woman said, I suggest you read your Bible.
Oh my God. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and agree, empath, it's right. There's so much pressure to have children. I've seen that in the church. So, okay. So was it at that point, at that comment, did you start to like, is that like, okay, I'm deconstructing now? Is that when it kind of began?
Yeah. Well, that was in 2011. So deconstructing wasn't a word, but
that's true. I remember that because.
So there was no word for what I was doing, but I was like, these are not my people. Did he get defrocked when he got divorced? No, he was not. He didn't actually get ordained. That's a whole other story.
Okay.
But they, I'm sorry, I like jumped to the future, and then I'm going back now to that day. There was no word for it. So I just kind of started asking lots of questions, and I didn't really want to go to church. And I think that was the beginning of like the real struggle. Was here I am living in this new place, wanting to make friends with the women who were on campus and people on campus, but I couldn't connect to anyone. And so I started opting to go to audition for shows that had rehearsals on Sunday mornings instead, or schedule things on Sunday mornings and try to really avoid church. And I think that was what people would have seen as would now consider the beginning of deconstruction, but I didn't have the word. So I knew that I was very much still in love with God. And I had a conversion experience when I was 15, and I still felt that was real, and I still feel that was real.
Okay.
But the God that I decided I was going to follow when I was 15, I was continuing to follow, and that God wasn't at church.
Okay.
That's kind of what happened.
Okay. All right. So knowing that's the step you took, how did your family respond? And your friends respond when you started to deconstruct and leave that behind?
Because I was married to my ex, I did not receive a lot of ridicule. So I was kind of safe. Like I was doing everything right. Both of my sisters had stopped considering themselves a Christian in college. So I was the one that did it right. I waited until marriage. They both lived with their boyfriends. Did it right. And I was married to someone who was going in ministry. And so a lot of my questioning wasn't really concerned to my parents, because they felt that I had this like really great like umbrella man protecting me.
Protected.
Yeah. And so as long as he was okay with it, they were okay with it. And publicly he was okay with it. In our home, he wasn't.
Right.
He wasn't happy with it. But that's how they responded to it. My in-laws were wondering a lot why I wasn't going to church as often.
Mm-hmm.
But when I would explain to them that, like, I just kind of say, like, I'm busy, or like work, or like it's just so hard when you're in the arts, you just have to work on Sundays.
Right, right.
And then it was just completely forgiven. So I really had this kind of blessing of either waiting tables or working in theater where I just couldn't go to church.
Mm-hmm.
And that really worked out.
Yes. That's interesting, because it did provide you that safety net.
Right.
Construct and still be considered Christian, if you will. And that's
Yes. Yes. So
Mike says, hello, brother and sister. How are y'all doing today? So we're doing good, Michael. All right. So you had that umbrella of protection, if you want to call it that, right?
Yeah.
Which is perfect. When did you actually have to tell him? When did you decide to tell him what was going on?
I never really told him. So what kind of happened was we got a divorce, and I got into theology school right away. And so, like, almost like he left me, and the same week he left me was I got my acceptance letter to theology school. So I was thrilled about theology school, not about the divorce, but I was thrilled about theology school. And
right.
It kind of became an interesting flow because I went to a Catholic seminary. So my parents, I like slowly became much more interested in folk Catholicism and all these traditions and old prayers connected to the saints and Marys and things like that. And I mean, I still consider myself Christian in a lot of ways. I just think I'm more of a Christian, like an old woman from the 1200s is a Christian, not in the same way that an evangelical American person is a Christian.
All right.
So I feel like for my parents, they just see me as like I became really Catholic and I'm still super liberal. And so, like, but I'm not Catholic. And then my mom will just say, like, as long as you love Jesus, as long as you love Jesus. And I do. Of all the gods, Jesus is one of my favorites. So, like, I just leave it to that conversation.
For that way, or
I've never said it to her.
Yeah, I do love Jesus of all the gods.
It's one of my top favorite.
The best, you know. That's awesome.
So I just don't tell them. I don't really talk about religion with them in an in-depth way. I think the hardest thing for my parents was seeing me be liberal. And I'm not really like, I'm not a Democrat, but I'm not a Republican either. I'm registered Democrat. I vote Democrat. Like, I don't know. We won't go into that direction, but to them, I've just like, politics is very binary, and I am pro-choice. So I'm a crazy raging liberal. I support Black Lives Matter. I'm a crazy raging liberal. I support LGBTQ rights. I'm a crazy raging liberal. And that's the hardest for them.
Right.
Because I think my parents see how spiritual I am. I just got back from Europe and I went around visiting cathedrals with all the Black Madonnas in it. And my uncle was trying to go through my grandmother's stuff and he found a rosary. And they were like, we know Lori's the one who wants the rosary. But like, I'm also the one that like, they're not sure if I'm Christian, but they're like, Lurie definitely wants that rosary. And so like, they're just very confused with what's going on with me. So that's kind of how they've taken it.
It is a conundrum. I mean, first of all, obviously you recognize other gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're considered Catholic, but not Catholic. You're considered liberal, but not necessarily a certain kind of liberal or a wild liberal, like a what do they call it? What's my what, I don't know what you call them, far right, far left,
I
whatever.
guess. I mean, I'm probably pretty far left if I like
Yeah.
took a test.
Okay. Okay. Well,
But
yeah. And you obviously have a different lifestyle right now.
Mhm.
So let me just blatantly ask you, what do you believe spiritually?
Okay. So, uh,
That's
so
great.
I am monotheistic, but I
Oh,
believe God manifests through all divinities that humanity has always honored. And that God that is the creator, I believe is a divinity that we are reaching towards that we have not been able to yet understand. And possibly we won't. And that's okay. Because I think part of spirituality is the reach towards the divine.
okay. And you've seen
So,
her doing it throughout history.
yes. So I think that, they've been reaching for the divine in Hinduism. They reach for the divine in Buddhism. They reach for the divine in indigenous cultures. It's a reach for the divine. And we do it in many different ways. I would say that indigenous cultures especially see the divine intertwined with nature. And so it's more of like a camaraderie with the divine,
Hmm.
whereas others see the divine as something separate from ourselves. And I would say that what I think is that the divine is here in this earth as well as above us and below us. So in terms of earth, I really like St. Hildegard's understanding of viriditas, that God's life-giving greening energy is all throughout nature. But
Hmm.
then I also like the idea of the universe and our intertwined connection with the universe. And yeah, and I believe that human beings are more powerful than we like to think we are. And I do think we can perform magic in really credible ways that I don't think we take seriously. And I don't mean miracles. I mean just literal, like, we have capabilities we're not really calling magic that actually are.
All right. All right. That's cool. Okay. So obviously that would not be fundamentalist. Uh, right. Uh, so I think that is fascinating. So let me ask you this: what advice would you give somebody that was growing in their spirituality?
Mm-hmm.
They start that process much like you did. Is there certain directions you would encourage them to go, certain things you'd have them think about, or what advice would you give them as a so-called deconstruct?
Yeah. There's two things I give advice about that I think are most important that I tell my clients. And the first one is that you need to be wrong. Just be as wrong as you possibly can be. Don't worry about being right. Don't care. Like, it's not important. It's not important to find out the right translation of that text. It's important to read a bunch of what other people have said about the text, totally, but like, you can be wrong. You get to be wrong, really super wrong. You get to decide one day you think this, and then find out you were wrong a month ago because you found out something else interesting that changed your mind. Just be wrong and dance in the joy of being wrong. I use the term the erotic a lot in my work because
Mhm.
it's coming from the Greek god Eros. And Eros is a trickster. Eros fucks shit up. Eros is here to like change things and change the games, the son of chaos. And when we are following the divine through the erotic, which is such traditional Christianity, it's insane. This is like Saint Francis. It's when we're following God through the erotic, it's unpredictable. We
Mhm.
don't know what's going to happen. We're going to do all sorts of things that to society are going to seem wrong. Revel in your wrongness. Find complete joy in just being wrong.
Mhm.
I've started to only respond to negative comments on my Instagram with laughing emojis because it's just like, ha ha ha, I fucked your brain up by posting something that you're not familiar with. Like, ha ha ha. Like, you are embracing being a holy fool, and you just be a fool.
Mhm.
And like, there's pure joy in just being wild.
Mhm.
That's the first thing. And the
Mhm.
second thing is because it's not about being right, it's much more about internal investigation than it
Mhm.
is about external investigation. A lot of people are going to say things that piss you off and trigger you and make you angry. that's the opportunity to go into the self and examine what's coming up for you and why things are triggering you and what's going on, and learning and growing from that. Ultimately, like, it's a time to be selfish and self-investigating, because we cannot dismantle oppressive systems outside of us if we're not decolonizing ourselves inside of us ourselves. So I teach shadow work. It's like the big program that I'm also like marketing right now. And Carl Jung talks about so within, so without. So if we're seeing chaos outside of us, it's mirroring for us a chaos inside of ourselves. And that is one of the huge gifts of deconstruction, is like, it's all, everything is up in the air. So you really get to look at everything. Like, what did you learn from that conversation your mom had with you when you were 5 years old about money or clothes? Or like, what are all these patterns that have been ingrained into your mind that are connected to religion? They're always end up being connected to religion, but it doesn't feel like it necessarily is. Like, let yourself fully self-discover instead of finding out. I think a lot of times in deconstruction, we focus a lot on how wrong evangelicals are. And I think those conversations can be healing. I think there's a place for that. But I think it's also like a good time to investigate how wrong we are, and like what's going on with us, and how can we then, because we're not right, we can't build something right. We can't build something good and loving if we're not in love with ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great advice. I've discovered how much I've been really wrong, especially these last 3 years, since I walked out of the church. And there's a freedom in it, because people will try to put you in a box. They'll try to determine. And people have heard me say this before. It's like, hey, are you an atheist? Are you agnostic? Are you a liberal Christian, conservative Christian? And I tell them no to all those things. I've spent 40 some years in a box. This is why that I've discovered that I'm growing and learning and evolving every day.
Right.
That, the box is for them, not for me. So they can understand me. Right. So
Right.
I just continue to grow and discover, new things come along, whether it's science or other things. And I'm like, I totally misunderstood that before. And so I love that. Be wrong, be terribly wrong, that's awesome. So knowing, appreciate those 2 words of advice, by the way. That was great. What do you do in your spirituality? What do you do to help with your personal healing? To really kind of make sure you're set where you need to be personally.
So shadow work is huge. I'll say, like, I teach it because it is the thing that has 100% saved me. It is, and for those who don't know, shadow work comes from Carl Jung, but it also is a very, very, very rooted in like all spiritualities across the world. Everyone has some form of shadow work in their work. He's just understanding it through the lens of psychology. But the idea is that we have our ego self, the parts of ourselves that are informing who we are. My job is part of our ego. This is my house, the car we want to buy, even just all of our identities. For me, a lot of it was being a good pastor's wife. That was like a big part of my ego.
Right.
And how and what are that are underneath in the shadow. So fear of being alone, fear that I'm not capable. These are all the things that I was connecting to being a pastor's wife. Fear of, like, because it would then mean I lost that community. I could always put my foot back in Christianity if I was a pastor's wife, even if I didn't want to be a part of it. So I was always in the club.
True.
And so there was something in there that I was holding to. That's shadow. That's all that shadow gunk. And how do we release those things, whatever those labels are? And shadow work is honestly releasing them before they have to go away. So it's saying, like, especially now is like I'm running a business and traveling and all these different things can come up. Really sitting in the fear and getting to know the fear, getting to know the jealousy, getting to know the anger, getting to know the gunk, so that I can fall in love with it, bringing love into the darkness, which is very much the gospel also, ironically. But so that gunk can then be redeemed. So I would say shadow work is essential. And then the other thing I was going to say that's big in my spirituality, especially now, is ancestral work and exploring and also I want to say like exploring the Black Madonna, I think is so essential. We have become such a confused society when it comes to race, and we do not understand that the divine is a Black woman. And we need to be able to connect back to like the original mother goddess was the goddess of the earth. She was she was dark, and that is and she is all of our mothers. And so I just visited a bunch of Black Madonnas all over Europe. And I really hugely recommend reading Christina Cleveland's book that's coming out, God is a Black Woman, because I think she did an incredible job at that. And that has been insanely healing for me to
So,
realize that who God is.
so for people that are not familiar with the Black Madonna,
Mm-hmm.
take just a brief moment, if you don't mind, and explain
Yeah.
that to people that are watching.
The Black Madonna are these incredible images of Mary that are all over the place, but the oldest ones are in Europe. Some of them are I think the oldest one is in Poland. There's a bunch in France. And they're kind of interesting because they're most likely tied to goddess worship that existed pre-Christianity. And then Mary was put on top of their primary goddesses. So there's all these great stories about these Marys where like they always include like Mary showed up and she gave them a statue of herself and she's like, build me a temple. And they were like, okay. And they do. And so there's these sanctuaries or churches that Mary had commanded to be built for her. And the statue that Mary, quote unquote, gave them is either we can trace back to who made it, and then we have records of like where that came from. Sometimes we don't. For example, Our Lady of Guadalupe, the official story is that Mary painted it. We don't really know where it came from. And there's like science behind Our Lady of Guadalupe is really interesting. It seems like scientists still can't figure out where she came from. And so, yeah, there's just these incredible images of her. And so a lot of people, myself included, like I believe in the mystical understanding of the Black Madonna, that I believe she did appear. I believe the Holy Mother appeared. Was it the Mary, the mother of Jesus? I would probably wager it was a divine being that appeared, like a Holy Mother that appeared. My literal sciencey self says it's the psyche of humanity clinging on to the memory of the goddess that was being taken away from them by the colonization of Christianity that wanted to destroy the feminine. So she's these really beautiful images, and there's a lot of really interesting paganish, like if you went to an old lady in those rural areas and you were like, you're practicing witchcraft, I guarantee you she'd be offended. But they're all doing interesting things that we would all call witchcraft, like leaving flowers out on St. John's night and considering those flowers to like heal, have magical powers. So
Right.
there's a lot of witchy things going on like in rural parts of Europe and
Sure.
Mexico too.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time to explain that.
Sure.
Finally, what I really want to ask you is, for everybody that's watching this now and will watch this later, what's the best way to find and follow you on your journey? What do you have coming up that you want us to know about?
Yeah, so the Shadow Work Intensive, it's called Dancing in the Shadow. It's Dancing in the Shadow Intensive. It's an independent on your own study that you can take. And if you go to my link in my bio right now, at Lurie Kimmerly, you can see a link to sign up for the free workshop connected to that intensive. And you can sign up for that. And then that's the thing that I'm focusing on right now. And
Okay.
I want to say also that right now, in particularly astrologically, is an incredibly good time to do shadow work. And for those who don't know, I'll just like quickly explain it. Venus is moving retrograde, but she's doing it into Pluto, which is the god of the underworld. So this is going to be a big time to like examine like our relationships and the ways that we're building relationships and holding our identity within our relationships. So if you are feeling like there's stuff going on romantically or also in your family life
Mhm.
or friendships that you feel like you really need to examine, oh my goodness, like the stars are so there for you. So this is a really powerful time to do
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And so there's that. Follow me on Instagram. That's the biggest thing. I also have a podcast called The Sex Positive Christian Feminists. And I do that with Rachel Alba, who's a sex coach. She's incredible. And we talk about Christianity and feminism and sex. And then what else? You can find me, my Facebook group is Women in Spiritual Deconstruction and Reconstruction. So go ahead and look that up on Facebook and join,
Wow.
and we hang out there.
That's exciting. That's awesome. You have a lot going on.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I'd love it. I'm always fascinated in the shadow work and, always purity culture, sex, all that kind of stuff as
Right.
well. Because I think it affected men and women just differently.
Oh,
That is so.
100%.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm a firm believer that feminism is not about equality between the genders. It is
Hmm.
about the dismantling of patriarchy, which is an oppressive system that harms men and women. And we cannot live in a liberated world by being equal in an oppressive one. We need to dismantle the oppressive systems instead. So, and I think Carly wants to know, my podcast is called The Sex Positive Christian Feminists.
Hmm. There we go. She's looking it up right. She's been waiting for you to come on and speak.
Oh,
Excited about this, so it's great. She's a former student of mine, actually, when I was a youth pastor back in the day. So
oh, wow.
great. Okay. I appreciate everything that you've done. For anybody that watches this now and is watching this later, let me tell you, hop on over to her page, give her a follow. She's doing great. Lori's doing great work, and she has been fabulous to get to know. You have enlightened me in a lot of ways already, and our show
Oh,
got to talk. So I'm looking forward to diving deeper into things that you have mentioned as well. So I can't thank you enough for being here. Appreciate everything you're doing. I'm excited that you are living your truth and living the way you want to live. I think that's awesome, and you've shown a lot of courage in doing it. And
hmm.
so that's one of those things that I know a lot of people I talk to, where have you, they're always, for lack of a better way to put it, encouraged when they see the courage of another that's doing what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so demonstrating that and being an example for that. So I appreciate you. Anybody that is watching this, will watch this, remember, follow her, listen, go to her podcast, follow her podcast. Join any classes she has online, whatever she offers, it's gold. So take a moment for her. Okay. So
Thank
with
you.
that, Lori, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Brad. And thank you for everyone who's watching. It was great interacting with you.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. All right.
See ya.
Bye bye.
Bye.